Sustainable for our two communities while continuing to maintain the excellence of the school district, which is a source of great pride to the board, the superintendent, our principals, our teachers, our students and their families, and I hope to all of you. As we know, this will be another challenging budget season for all of us as we face new leadership at the state level, the redistricting of our schools here in District 17, and the reallocation of district assets. To that end, we have a continuing desire to upgrade technology, infrastructure, security, and much more. But let's start with what your continuing desires are as you prepare your budgets locally for the next fiscal year. We thought it might be helpful to take a look at the history of our town assessments over the past 10 years or so, and I have copies that I'll pass around. Pass those, thank you. It might be helpful as a way of tracking how we've gotten to this point. Our board treasurer, Peter Somsky, is not able to be here tonight, but I wanted to ask our finance committee chair, Suzanne Sack, to share any additional thoughts she might have with you before we begin our discussion. Suzanne?
First and foremost, your priorities as you look forward in your budgets, things that you're trying to accomplish, how that impacts or things that you do impact what you're doing. Two is, to the extent that you have any notion of what you think this state is doing, what's going on with state funding, how you think you're going to are you preparing for that, and or the last thing I would say is just anything that would help guide us about how you're preparing to implement your budget. I know that a couple of years ago or last year, we actually took diverging paths in the way we handled the potential state cuts. Some of us budgeted in anticipation of them, some of us didn't, and so we had a little bit of a mix of outcomes in budgets relating to that. So those are some of the things that I would love to hear, things we've talked about a lot over the time, but it's great and finally to talk about it right prior to the budget. So I think it's really about letting you start off if you'd like to. Okay.
Yeah, we can start really anywhere you like. Maybe the concerns that you might have or expectations you might have of what this new state leadership will bring us. If you can give us any insight into what you might know, that might help us all understand what we're possibly facing. Or if you have something that you'd like to make sure that we understand going in as a starting off point, that's fine too. Our two first selectmen are here, other members of the boards of selectmen and finance. Anyone is welcome to take this away from me. Melissa.
Hi everyone, Melissa Schlag, Selectman of Haddam. You mentioned a couple of questions, Sue. Priorities in our budget. My personal priority has always been sharing of services. I would love to look at that with the towns. We had previous conversations with Mike about garbage management, possibly using our new roll-off truck to save some money there. Unfortunately, you had already gone out for that RFP and I think awarded a bid at that process. At the end of that process. So maybe, I don't know where you are in that at this point, that's one idea, and also like sweeping of parking lots. We have our own sweeper truck, actually two. We did have, I'm not sure the status of both of those. That's something else, maybe we could share some, save some money there. State funding, I know that the two state reps, both Norm Needleman, state senate elect, and Christine Palm, state rep elect, I have spoken to both of them. They are both going to fight for ECS equality for Haddam at least. Killingworth, I think you guys are set, but Haddam is definitely still underfunded. In closing, I do have a letter I'd like to read. It's just some quick notes that I put down about the closing of HES from my personal perspective and a little bit from a selectman perspective. And I have some letters of the same thing I'm reading that I'll enter into the record. And I thank everybody for all the work that they've done on that process.
Melissa, could I just ask you for brevity though, because our time is limited.
I'll be quick. It's just one page. First, I will start by expressing my disappointment that there has not been a formal study of any kind, as noted by Suzanne Sack at your last meeting. Mrs. Sack explained that all the Wesleyan students did was crunch some specific numbers for a regression analysis using data given to Wesleyan by the Board of Education. Mrs. Sack went on to say Wesleyan made no predictions about enrollment. None. That's a direct quote. I also heard repeated mention of this issue being about HK restructuring and not about closing HES. This is just covering up the real issue of concern, which is the actual closure of HES in the middle of Hingham Center. As a selectman, I don't have a voice in the educational decisions except as a citizen, but I do have a voice with respect to what happens in the center of our town and have yet to hear any real financial reason to close the school. Unfortunately, if you have shared anything with the first selectman of Haddam, other than Joanne's short update letters, thank you for those, Joanne, but that information is not passed on to the board because I have seen none of it. I ask that all selectmen in both towns receive updates. A town gets strength from its schools, and a school gets strength from its town. In order to remain a strong and viable community, I have some points that I hope you have or will consider. Will you take into consideration Haddam's POCD with its many mentions of HES as a major asset? Will you look at effects the school closure would have on the center of Hingham? Have you done any traffic studies? Have you looked at all the enrollment predictions? The lack of information, data, and specifics is very concerning to not only me, but to the entire community. I'm sure you'll remember when we did tough mathematical equations in math class, we were all taught to show our work. Will you show us all your work? None of the information or data you are using is accessible to the public. It appears some board members don't even have it. Will you post the Wesleyan data on your website so board members and the public can see it? Will you post your budget plan with respect to the school closure savings on your website? My final comment is extreme dismay that you include Swan Hill in your RFP. Swan Hill is a huge recreational draw and natural resource in our town. Should you go forward with your plans to close HES, I urge you to subdivide the parcel and give Swan Hill to the land trust or other environmental entity. Finally, with no study, no professional data crunching on enrollment, no transparency of data, and no financial information, I do not believe the HK Board of Education has made the right decision to close a school at this time. I urge you to wait 1 year and perform a professional analysis with complete transparency. Thank you.
Okay, just a couple of things that come to mind. For one thing, the letter that you referenced to the first selectman is simply a copy of what appears on the district website. It's the same release that goes out to the bulletin, to HaddamKillingworth.com, etc. There's nothing that is in that information that is different from what appears on the RSD 17 website. As for transparency, and really other board members are welcome to respond, but the board, the public has what the board was given in order to reach its decision on, it is restructuring, it is not just about HES. HES is a piece of the entire restructuring process, which includes the creation of the intermediate school, a key point in this whole restructuring process, the creation of the 2 K-3 primary schools, the use of the middle school. This building is underutilized, and it is our best building in the district. We want to get the most we can out of it. That has been also part of this. So it is restructuring. It is not just about HES. Anyone else on board like to comment?
The question is, is this what everybody wants to hear? This is how you want to use the time?
Please, yeah, please use your mic.
So I guess the question is this how this group wants to do? Do you want to spend time talking about the restructuring? Is that valuable for you? Anybody? I mean, that it wasn't specifically on the agenda. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. So a couple things, just since I was quoting the letter. Let's get clear about what Wesleyan did and Wesleyan didn't do. And let's also just get clear about enrollment projections.
Can't hear our...
Can't hear.
So I'm
Yes.
It's really a rock star. Mike was wearing a lot of them, sweating on Mike. So anyway,
let's just get clear about a couple of things, because I do think there is a meaningful amount of misinformation out about what is what. So I'll do my best to answer those questions. So first off, the restructuring is about many things. And so to talk about one isolated piece of the puzzle and not talk about the integrated parts is actually not enormously helpful. However, I'll be willing to kind of address some of the pieces so that we can get clarity about information. But if we really want to talk about the restructuring in whole, we really need to devote a meaningful amount of time to do that. You should have the report in front of you that the board put together and is available to anybody who asks for it, so that we can go through it and you can see the logic of how we built the whole justification to do what we did. So having that being said, let's talk first about Wesleyan, I guess. It's a good enough place to start. So obviously an important part of making a decision about restructuring, consolidation, closing new schools, building new schools, any of that kind of stuff, enrollment needs to be considered. And when you look at the enrollment reports that were completed for RSD 17 in the past by NESDEC, you'll see that they have written content in them, and this is attached as an appendix to the report that was put together on the restructuring, that says that the best predictor of enrollment in 4 schools is the actual students that are in the school at the time that you want to make a projection. Number 2, it says that the next best thing is to consider the births, the actual births recorded in the towns at the time, up to 5 years prior to entering into kindergarten. The next thing is you start to predict births, and they admit that when you get into the business of trying to predict how many people are going to be born, you start to veer off into an area of unpredictability and lack of confidence in those numbers. So once you get past that point, it becomes tricky and less accurate. And they quote that becomes at least 1% more inaccurate every year you go out past 5 years, and that's accurate. And what most studies will do is they will create whatever mathematical basis they have for their enrollment projections, linking off of these housing starts, housing sales, grand list growth, grand list shrinking, all of those kind of indications that give an indication of growth in a place, and will that allow for people to come, or jobs coming in? Does that mean young people are going to come work with their children to go work at those jobs and bring their children into schools? So when you look back at NASDAQ's report of enrollment, they use what, for the 4 years that they had available for actual births in the community, they used what I will call, their word, a multiplier of 1.2 to 1.25. For every kid that was born, you add 25 kids or 20 kids by the time they get to kindergarten. That's just what the numbers say. That's not their math, but if you do the reverse math, that's how it works out. Does that make sense? No, that doesn't make sense. So if there were 10 kids born in the district, right, 1.25 of that will go into kindergarten. So 10 plus another 25% will go into kindergarten. Okay? Is everyone following me so far? All right. So that was their methodology at the time. And in doing that, their predictions for enrollment against what actually was enrolled, and all this enrollment information is available, their studies available as a part of the report, if they're off, and they overestimated the birth to kindergarten ratio. Is this a knock on NESDEC? It absolutely is not a knock on NESDEC, because that is what they predicted based on their special algorithms of predictability. Okay? If you look at the historical birth to enrollment ratio, it's on average for Tatum Killingham specifically, it boils down to 1.15, so it's actually 15%. However, it's not 15% every year. Some years it's -5, some years it's 30%, some years it's 20%, some years it's 10%. it has a standard deviation when you look at birth to kindergarten. So what we said to ourselves was, do you invest in a NASDAQ? And you can see what their accuracy has been in the projections that we've seen in the past. Do we use the historical rates that we see from birth to kindergarten? Or do something different? So we decided to use the historical rate of birth rates to kindergarten. The historical data that was available to us. What we asked Wesleyan to do was to come up with what were the leading indicators that were the highest correlated between enrollment, growth, or shrinking, and birth rates, housing starts, housing sales, brand lists, anything else that was an economic factor. So they ran their regression analysis and they came up with two links. One was that births had the strongest level of confidence in relation to enrollment changes, and that repeats what NASDAQ said in their report, and they said on average it's 1.15%, which was no surprise to us because we had already calculated that historical average. So they confirmed what we already knew. They also went ahead and put projections together for what they thought that would translate for us, and we did not use those numbers. We used our own, which were higher numbers than their predictions. So while Wesleyan did work, Wesleyan only confirmed what we already knew, and in fact, we utilized our own numbers at the end of the day. Now, you may sit there and judge and say, that was not the right thing to do. You guys aren't the ones who should be doing this calculation. You should have a professional group go out there and spend the $7,000 to $10,000 for the confidence that it would give us that a professional has done this. And if you want their multipliers from birth to kindergarten, we can use their multipliers from birth to kindergarten. Because if you use those, if you use 125, if you use 135, if you use almost 145, when you go back to the other half of this issue, which is capacity, we still have capacity. So that's the other big issue, is it's not just about enrollment projections. It's an important factor in this whole thing. However, the capacity of the schools is such at this stage of the game that even if we went to multipliers that are way out of bounds from the historical nature of the enrollment projections that have been done, connections been made in the past, we still would have capacity in our schools. And that doesn't include that we have an empty school in our central office with classrooms in it, which is available to do what we need to do. So this was not an arrogant move to say students can figure this out just as easily as anybody else. It was not. It was not an arrogant move on our part that we thought we were so much smarter than a demographer, we could figure it out. It just was looking at all the information that we had available, and it all pointed to the same thing. And we felt comfortable, because even though we didn't know exactly what the right multiplier is, we had historical data, and even if that historical data proved to be untrue, and we had some unusually high version that's never happened in the past, even through 2003, 4, 5, 6, in the boom of the housing economy, those multipliers never got us that number. We still would have capacity. So that was our basis. Okay? So that's the first thing. In the piece about capacity, so there are a couple of ways to look at this. One is just kind of a very big picture. At the peak of our enrollment of 2557, I don't know what the exact number is, we added 850 seats into our capacity by building a middle school. Now, whether you think that was a good idea or not is not part of the discussion of the committee or anybody else, but it's a fact. And then from that point on to the last 10 years, our enrollment proceeded to decline by 500 students. Okay? 850 new seats, 500 less students, and we anticipate that enrollment will continue to decline for the next couple of years. Not because we're not having more kids coming in, but because the kids that are coming in are not bigger in class size than the kids that are going out. And essentially, we do not lose a lot of children in and out of schools from K through 12, except for between 7th and 8th grade. Excuse me, 8th and 9th grade, where about 10 to 14% of students opt to go to private school, or someplace else to go to school. So the life of the cohorts throughout those 12 years stays amazingly consistent. Goes up a little, goes down a little, but amazingly consistent, drops off after 8th grade. So every graduating class is smaller than its kindergarten class as it comes in. Okay? It's all in, those are in, you can look at the NESDAQ. Did I say it backwards? Sorry. So anyway, so we added all this capacity, and then when you look at our enrollment trends over time, we have yet to have a kindergarten class as big as what would be, I guess, our 5th grade class is kind of our peak of our boom. The 5th grade class has to push all the way up and out, and our kindergarten classes coming in have to grow bigger than those classes for our net enrollment to grow. So is that 2020? Is that 2022? Is that 2020? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen based on, some. Then you can get into the nitty-gritty of how many kids in each class, how many kids in each school, and we have worked on all of that stuff. So we know exactly how many kids are coming in for kindergarten next year. We don't know exactly where they're all going to sit and how many teachers we're going to need at the end of the day. But it is all being planned. We have between Burr and Killingworth, we have over 900 seats available for K through 3. And what we currently have next year, based on what we're anticipating, is about 550. I'm using these numbers off the top of my head, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but we essentially have hundreds of seats available in these 2 schools for capacity growth. Okay. So, I'm sure this is way more than anybody ever wanted to know about enrollments, and I just wanted to get
No, I'm
really
grateful,
clear about it.
and I just don't want the conversation to get away from us. Because it wasn't that long ago where we would all be sitting at this table talking about
how enrollment was trending downward, but the school budget was going up, and people in all of our positions were saying, when are you people going to get a clue on the Board of Education? And so this was our way of trying to sustain the excellence that I spoke of before. We are trying to go from 5 campuses to 4. And that was part of this, in addition to creating the intermediate school, the educational efficacy that we want to maintain and improve. That's all part of this, and the numbers that Suzanne referenced go along with that. But we can leave that right there. If our first selectmen have anything that they would like to say in general about budgets or HES restructuring, it's fine. Shared services.
First of all, thank you to the school boards for having listened to all the meetings that we've had with the boards of finance and the boards of selectmen from the 2 towns. I think that the selectmen and the boards of finance from the 2 towns have said every year for a number of years that we need to find ways to control our costs without impairing our educational quality, which affects not only our kids and the future of our world, but our property values and the success of our towns. And I was persuaded by what I heard that this program was a way to do that. I understand that the building that is being closed happens to be in Haddam, and that is an issue that for the town of Haddam.
We will go right to public comment, but we've had a couple of questions about the 5-minute limitation per speaker and the 20-minute limitation per topic area. This is related to the bylaws of the board, section 9225A. It's clearly stated, and I hope that you understand that that is not meant to stifle public comment, but we do have a lot of business ahead of us tonight. And so the policy, which predates all of us on this board, is meant to keep the meeting going, because we could be here for 6 hours if public comment were that open-ended. So I hope you understand that this is not a way of curbing your desire to speak, but we do have this slight limitation, and I hope that we can accommodate that. So if there is someone who would like to address the board, please come forward. And there is a sign-up sheet. That was the other point that I wanted to make. Someone asked about that. We want to get the names right in the minutes. We had a couple of occasions where people's first names or last names were not clear. We wanted to spell them right. It's simply in the name of accuracy. So please go ahead, sir.
Hope you can hear me. Mark Vaughn, 57, Coyote Trail, Higginham. I'm a teacher of 23 years in Middletown Public Schools. I recently purchased my home in Higginham in June. I have a 7th grader here and a kindergartner at HES. So when we look for a house, we wanted the best schools for our kids. That's what we look for. And you look on the Realtor.com, you look at anything, you look at the simple ratings. Your ratings were higher, 8 or 9s, than East Hampton, Portland, Cromwell, East Haddam, Marlboro, Colchester, and Durham. That's why we chose here. That's the simple fact why we chose here. We paid more to be here. We don't care about the mill rate. We want what's best for our kids. I teach 6th grade in Middletown. Your projection numbers are wrong because everybody's thinking the way I'm thinking. I have 5 families from my 6th graders last year go here now. That's just from one town. 5 kids switched, 5 families switched, and that's going to continue. So your projections don't count for that. All right? Your ratings will go down if you close that school. It's a fact. They base those ratings on class size, schools in your district, capacity, what they're filled to, and test scores. And your test scores will eventually go down. I hear the jargon, I hear how it's better with 3 schools, you're going to consolidate, it's better for programming, all that stuff. And I work in education. It sounds great. The reality is not that case. You put those people, the same services into Burr, yes, it may be streamlined, but they don't have the same space, they don't have the same room, they don't have the same equipment. Everything gets consolidated. So it sounds good. And this school will be compromised as well. This school will be compromised in a way because they don't even have the schedule yet how it's going to work. Their programming will be compromised. There will be less PE, less music, less art, less STEM, less IT, less life skills classes because you can't program it all into one day. It doesn't work. You only have a certain amount of rooms. To speak to the capacity numbers that were said earlier, those capacity numbers are based off what? 24 in a class? Yes, that's capacity, but right now we have 16 in a class. And the number one factor of how kids do in school is class size. So I look at the 3 things that you stated on your website, why this happens. Maximize the middle school. This school capacity is 900. Correct, it would be under capacity. But it was built and constructed with the idea of a 4-grade school, not a 5-grade school. There are 4 pods, and it keeps the kids separate and together, and it gives them a sense of community within their grade. That will not happen with 5 grades. So it is not maximizing the potential of this school. So that's number 1. Number 2, like needs I already addressed. Doesn't really happen. And 5, the third one is the one that's most interesting to me. Maintain community standards. It's almost laughable, okay? Because you are gambling that the kids all transition to Burr with no repercussions. You are gambling that the 4th graders and the 5th graders come here and the schedule works. You're gambling that your ratings stay up. You're gambling that your property values stay up. You're gambling with all this stuff. East Haddam just voted to keep their schools open under capacity. You know how many schools in Middletown are under capacity? 11 of 11 are under capacity. All right, so capacity is It's just a number. You are gambling for all this, and you're gambling for the future of our children and the education they're getting for, listen to this, 2.3% savings. $1 million is 2.3% of your projected budget. Risk reward. I didn't even mention downtown economic development, but that's also risk reward. Risk reward. Is the risk worth the reward of 2.3%? I don't think so.
One other aspect of public comment that many of you who've been here before know is that it is a one-way street. It is not possible for us to respond. We are listening to you. This is not a public hearing, hence the 20 minutes, hence the 5 minutes, but we are listening because you have the microphone, so I'll put mine now. Go ahead, sir.
Appreciate it. John Intravi, I've been a resident of Haddam for over 30 years now. A lot of people might remember me from Higginham Veterinary Clinic, where I worked for the past 3 years or so. I would just like to kind of future project from basically studying history at Haddam Elementary under Mr. Stochek, which is one of the greatest teachers I ever had. And you said before too, there's no way to assume like negativity is going to happen, which is true. I mean, every day negativity happens, but we never know what's going to happen until it happens. That being said, what's going to happen now is that, from what I'm seeing, is the real estate market right now, as soon as you guys announced that you were going to sell Haddam Elementary or get rid of it altogether, houses went on the market like that. Like, snap of a finger, and all of a sudden people were trying to sell their houses because they didn't want to be here anymore if they weren't going to have their school. So what's going to happen now is if you move everyone over to Burr School, with half the population moving out of town, which is progressively happening over the past few years or so, and then all of a sudden you find that the same problem happens at Burr. Are you going to close Burr down too, and then all of a sudden all of Haddam schools are in Killingworth? Because then that means we're not even a town anymore. We have Killingworth as our school, which basically is what I kind of heard from the meeting beforehand, is that Killingworth wants this to happen, but Haddam does not. And I mean, you shake your head at me all the time, that's fine, but I am a resident here. I, again, have lived here for over 30 years. I have noticed, even on my street alone, the real estate signs that have gone up since the announcement has probably been about quadruple from when it was beforehand. So, I mean, I go down Hayden Hill Road and I see probably about, 10 signs up now, house for sale, house for sale, house for sale. Whereas before the announcement was made, there might have been 2, maybe 3. So, I mean, the state of the town is a problem. It has been for quite a while now. Getting rid of a school, which I was there when they added the addition on back in like the late 80s, early 90s. So you can't really say that the entire school is 45 years old, because the majority of it, seeing as how the addition was the larger portion, is probably about, 30, 30 maybe, 40 is pushing it, I don't know. Now again, that was back in like the late 80s, I believe, is when that addition was put up. So, at the end of the day, it's another one of the situations where, Killingworth votes and Haddam pays the taxes. And that's been going on for quite a while. And at the end, you said it yourself, you're not even at capacity. What was the point of building this school? And when I do my own research before I, go, because I'm a chess player. And I actually looked, and it was kind of interesting to read that basically when you first did this, wanted to install this school, there was a budget you had, which Killingworth was not happy with, and the Board of Education decided to pay back about, like $52,000 out of the $100,000 budget? That's absurd. Like, why is Killingworth ruling what Haddam does? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, at the end of the day, again, I played basketball in 6th grade where we played against Killingworth, we played against Burr. Burr's a smaller school. I'm not trying to say one school should close over the other, but it makes no sense if you're going to condense everybody into a smaller school, and then all of a sudden you have this group of like kids. That, once again, too, I actually have friends who have students, at Haddam Elementary, at HK, and they've all said that the bullying situation is kind of a big deal. I know that's kind of a hot topic at this point, but they said, even one of the people I know who's a parent, she went up to the administration, and the administration just basically shunned her and said, no, that's no good. So in the end, this daughter of hers had to leave the school. So you're telling me by putting a younger grade of kids in with older kids, that bullying is going to be subsided? I don't think so. I teach hand-to-hand combat with young kids. I just hear the stories all the time of young kids getting picked on by older kids. You're going to smush everybody into a building that doesn't hold everybody. You're going to have so many problems. So many problems. So, I mean, once again, to me, and I may be the only one, but I don't think so, it almost sounds as if you're trying to push everything into Killingworth, and Haddam's just going to be like a ghost town. We heard it before, there's so many empty buildings there, and we're just going to wait on a gamble that hopefully this place will be bought out by some, who knows, millionaire or something, and it's going to be turned into some great economic boom for the city. But it's not. I mean, Haddam is kind of falling at this point. You know, we have a few places that are great and a lot of places that are empty. And at the end of the day, I'd like to see that place stay, because what's the point of having a center of town if there's no center to it?
I do want to make sure that both of our speakers so far have signed their names, please, so we get the spelling right. Go ahead, Mr. Collins.
Good evening, my name is Arthur Collins, and I'm from Higginham. And I also, 40 some odd years ago, I moved from Middletown with my wife and I because of the school. I had 3 daughters go through, and the youngest one had special education, and she did great because she's the only one that got a master's degree. So I'm still here. The other thing is, when you're having this, can't this technology here get up more microphones around so everybody can be here? I mean, we're sitting out in here. I know I'm an old guy, but still, I got to go around here like a microphone and sit down there and make sure everybody speaks up clear, so everybody, even though we can't participate, we have the right to know what's being said without straining our ears. And the other thing on closing the school, whether or not, I've said this before, that whether we have a company or somebody comes in and looks at the building, wants to do something with it, or maybe when they look at it, because it's an old building in the old section back in the 40s, and when they do any renovations under state law, you have to do up to electrical code. Right now, it's the 2014 National Electrical Code plus state electrical code, and the fire code and plumbing and all this, and that's what our selectman was saying, how it costs a lot of money. So whether we had them going to do it for a community center or something like this, it has to be done because there's no air conditioning. And that's why when people come and look at it, we might like this area, want to do something, but they would prefer just to tear the building down and start from scratch in order to do that, and build everything up to modern with air conditioning, stuff like that. So I hope that you take that in consideration, that someone's interesting is that, well, we don't want to make a memorial out of the school. We want the property, whatever we're going to put in there, is going to be good for the town with taxes and all that. Thank you.
We've got about 10 minutes left before we need to move on with our agenda, but go ahead.
Neil Parent, Haddam Neck. One of my regrets is resigning from this board a year and a half ago to family obligations, because I would have voted no. I got elected on the Board of Ed just like every single one of you, and you can respond as chairperson to the people that are talking to you. All my votes were based on the 8 core values. Do you know them?
I'm familiar with them, yeah.
All 8. There's one that's stewardship. That has to go with the resources and the facilities of this building. However, when you got elected by taxpayers. We elected you, as I was, to represent the taxpayers. When you have public hearings prior to your vote to close HES, and there's more than 11 people, which is what's on your board, wanting to keep HES open, then why did you not keep it open? You also, in this board and the previous board, set to referendum and town votes for the renovation of the schools. Why wasn't this? It's our tax money. We elected you to represent us. There is, I counted at the start of this, over 50 people here. I guarantee there's over 50 people here that don't want HES closed. I'm from Haddam Neck. I have no, I don't want to say resources, I don't use HES. My kids never went to this school district. I did. But this is greater than one building. This is about the community, the taxpayers, and the center of our town. And when you go to listen to somebody that gives you numbers that's not from this town, and as chairperson, can you not, or can you make a motion to rescind that vote and have it sent to the taxpayers?
Neil.
As
at the risk-
chairperson, can you make a motion for your board to rescind the actual vote and send it to the taxpayers?
My view is that as
Yes or no?
chair. you
It's a
can-
yes or no answer.
Well, no, you can ask for a motion to be made on,
No, I can't make that motion. I'm not on your
Not you.
board. You can as the chair.
let me answer the first question.
Would you be willing to rescind the vote to send it to the taxpayers?
Would I personally?
Yes.
No.
Then you need to resign.
Just one other thing, though. The board acted within its authority and its responsibility because District 17 is the owner of that property.
But you represent the taxpayers.
We own that property.
We own it, not you.
And you ignored us every time.
Okay.
With that, and you won't put us on the agenda so that we can have a back and forth with our members.
Go ahead, please, ma'am.
I don't know if we're supposed to identify ourselves or not.
The mic's not on.
Use your mic.
Okay.
You can't talk anyway.
Well, that's television.
What I meant was, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to identify myself for the meeting, the people here. My name is Mary Hickish. My family has been in this town for over 60 years, paying taxes all that time. While I have not been here all the time, I kind of came into this through the back door. I am of the practical point of view that we do have to live within our budget. That being said, I just don't, if I'm understanding correctly, no sort of cost-benefit analysis was done. The figures don't seem to add up. And as a taxpayer, if the regional board says, yes, a school has to be closed down, that is what we have to live with, I suppose. That being said, I'm not convinced that closing Haddam Elementary would be the wise choice, particularly if the town begins to expand again. Simply because, and finally, I can go on forever, the economic impact on the center of this town, for those of us who've lived here for a long time, remember what happened when the country market went out? We are now facing a situation in that center where there are a whole bunch of businesses that are pulling out, and there is the danger of the remaining business people that they're going to pull out. Has that been put into consideration? What happens if the country market or the Higginham market closes down again? Was that factored in? I'd like to see a heck of a lot more before I could vote positively on this.
Time for one more?
Yes.
Maurice Adams had him. Maurice Adams had him. I do have a proposal, but first I'd like to do just a little bit of a review. I think most of the board has seen these figures before. Several years ago, a lot of Haddam residents came before you, and we kept saying, it's budget like this going up and student population going down. Just historical and projected. So for members of the audience, what we kept showing, all of us, was historically budget going up, student population going down. And it was based on several factors. One of them was 10% student decline in Connecticut overall, and the other is 21% student decline in RSD 17 per River Cog. Okay? So we all came and we presented this to the board. We put a lot of pressure on them. I think they've responded. In case they didn't catch it, what I noticed around our town of Higginham is during the recent election, the most prominent advertisement in town was this. It doesn't really matter who the person is, but it is cut taxes. We have continually pushed as a town to cut taxes. So here we are giving the Board of Education a very difficult thing. On one hand, we're saying cut taxes always, and on the other hand, keep the school open for us. So my proposal is this. everyone here, keep your enthusiasm, keep your organization, keep your efforts going, and let's go to the next selectmen's meeting on Tuesday night and put some pressure on them to say, what can we do as a town of Haddam to keep Higginham going? Don't put it all on the Board of Education. That's my proposal. Yeah. Oh, and we voted for him 55%. Okay. We did.
Okay. I think I can speak loudly enough.
No, use the mic.
My name is Pamela Crum. I've lived in town for, I guess, 36 years. You get that from me? I wrote a letter to the board. Every member of the board received it. I came here this evening, however, I would like to be able to read my letter so that it gets put into the permanent public record. Thank you. To the members of the Board of Education, I am writing to you in fervent protest of the closing of the Haddam Elementary School. Since this is such an emotionally charged issue with the taxpayers of Higginham and Haddam, I strongly recommend a stay of execution for HES until such time every taxpayer question or concern is heard and addressed in full by the Board of Education. The perception by many taxpayers is that the current superintendent has had his own agenda, gave the hard sell to the BOE, and the Board of Education drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak. The Board of Education's rush to close HES, dump the property, and hurry through a handful of informational meetings is certainly disconcerting to a growing number of concerned taxpayers. I attended one Board of Education meeting a while back to participate in the short public comment portion. When I saw the blank, bored look on the members' faces, I pretty much realized that they weren't really listening and that this public comment was perfunctory. I admit that a feeble attempt has been made to disseminate select criteria purportedly used to arrive at the decision to close HES. However, many questions still remain unanswered or ignored altogether. Many taxpayers, and by taxpayers I mean the folks here who cast their vote on the annual education budget and either vote Board of Education members in or out of office, like myself, would like to view additional demographic studies performed by professional companies that confirm the findings of the study upon which the decision to close HES was based. Additional studies are simple due diligence when faced with such a hard decision with a drastic result. I'm also quite curious as to why just a few short years ago we, the taxpayers, were called upon to foot the bill for a new multi-million-dollar middle school due to what was promoted as a projected increase in enrollment, and we just had to have it. Now it appears that this brand new school will need to be renovated at an additional cost to the taxpayers to accommodate the promised separation of the young elementary students from the older middle school students sharing the same facility. I wonder what that tax bill will look like and what upward impact to taxes. We, the thoroughly uninformed taxpayers, dread that in a short while the pendulum will swing the other way and we will be asked yet again to foot the bill for another new multi-million-dollar school facility because enrollment projections are on the upswing and we no longer have the facility nor the property to accommodate it. I suggest it would be prudent of the Board of Education to publish their long-term strategic plan, if one even exists, that clearly lays out the results of more than just one projected demographic analysis and delineates the costs to be incurred renovating HKMS and BES facilities to accommodate the restructuring, juxtaposed against the cost savings to be realized for the closing of HES and the inevitable teacher eliminations. What would the actual net cost savings look like for the first year, the second year, third year, etc.? I suggest that if the intent is solely to save money and lower future budget costs, could we possibly take another look at the salary and benefit line item? I've often really wondered myself exactly why the superintendent with a secretary needs an assistant superintendent with an assistant. I would find it quite informative to learn what cost savings, salary and benefits, the entire compensation package, might be realized with eliminating the positions of the assistant with an assistant. $250,000, less, more? I don't know. Does each elementary school really need a full-time principal in-house? What cost savings could be realized by sharing an elementary principal? In closing, I implore the members of the Board of Education to reverse their decision to close Haddam Elementary School and sell the property. At the very least, postpone the action until such time the taxpayers of Haddam can absorb all the data yet to be made public, ask questions, and get concise answers and full disclosure. I remain a concerned taxpayer. Pamela Crum. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
My topic is different. It's not this. You said 20 minutes on
You're going to have to listen to us today.
So I brought handouts and I'll leave them here. My name is Heather Pott, and I'm here tonight to shed some light on some comments made at the Board of Ed meeting on 11/6. I'm a Haddam resident, a former employee, and most importantly, a parent of 2 children in this district. I have a very vested interest in the happiness of your employees, my former colleagues, and the amazing teachers of my children. At the November 6th meeting, during the committee reports, Ms. Buzzy asked if the Personnel Subcommittee should be doing exit interviews with staff who are leaving. Ms. Buzzy noted that her question stemmed from noticing a lot of people leaving, particularly at the middle school, and that recently the longtime nurse and head of nursing had left. She was curious about why and noted that happy people don't leave a job. A conversation ensued with Ms. Sachs noting that it's not the job of the Personnel Subcommittee, and Mr. Theory reporting that when resignations are received, there is a standard letter back, and that there is always a closing statement that offers an exit interview. He noted that some employees do it and some don't. The conversation went on to say that the managing the personnel in each building is not the Board of Ed's job. Ms. Whalen and Ms. Sachs both noted as there were indicators of a systemic problem or red flags, this should be looked into with greater detail. It was referred back to committee. I am here tonight as a parent, a school psychologist, and a former employee to tell you that the red flags are everywhere, and you are missing it. Your teachers are second to none. My children's teachers, from my son's first grade teacher and her passion for the Magic Tree House that inspired his love of books, all the way to the tech ed teacher at the high school who teaches all week and then hosts robotics team meetings until late in the evening, are outstanding. But you are hemorrhaging. We have amazing people leaving our district, and the ones who stay are drowning. You have a problem. You are the Board of Education, and I am here to tell you that your staff needs your help. When I heard the conversation from the November meeting, I knew that yet again I was hearing lies presented to you. I knew that I had not been offered an exit interview, but I had at the time assumed it was because I had been more honest than is traditional in my letter of resignation. I also knew that administration was not happy that I had sent my letter to the Board of Education instead of just administrators, because I had been told so. I have heard that others who have resigned since me were told specifically not to do this. Why is this? What are we trying to hide? How can you, as the Board of Ed, people who are giving up your precious free time to serve and lead for the benefit of the children of our community, do so if you don't have all the necessary information? So I've gathered the information for you. I reached out to some of the people who have left over the past few years and asked them to complete an anonymous Google form. Most of the information is not shocking to me, it's what I already knew, with the exception about the question about the return letter from Mr. Theory upon resigning. I thought I was an exception, but it turns out that in my sample, 53.8% of respondents never even got a letter. 38.5% got no exit interview offer, and only 7.7%, or one person out of the 13 respondents, got the letter and the offer that Mr. Theory told you on November 6th was standard operating procedure. Since the offer had mostly not been made, no one in this group attended an exit interview. 3 people did note that even if they had been offered one, they would not have attended with Mr. Theory. You can view the handout for their comments regarding this. Personally, I would not have chosen to attend, but this is why I chose to write my letter the way I did. I wanted you to know that my job in your district had changed so profoundly that I was no longer happy doing it because what I was being asked to do was not meeting the needs of students. But based on my years of experience with Mr. Theory, I was not about to meet with him to discuss this. My final question was to provide information for Ms. Buzzy's question. I wanted to know what my colleagues felt about the idea of the Board of Ed conducting exit interviews. 100% of my respondents agreed that they would have participated in this type of exit interview. People had strong thoughts about this and felt that in that environment they could have and would have shared their thoughts, some of which I will share with you. I was most concerned with the direction the district leadership was taking the district. I believe in the teachers of this district, and I don't think the board has any idea how unhappy their staff is. Another staff member stated, "I don't trust the superintendent. I don't believe he is acting in the best interest of students. Another, I don't feel valued, and I don't think the superintendent would have taken my answer seriously. And finally, the last respondent stated, I finally decided I was not making any more sacrifices for this district that did not value my input. It's very sad that it came to this, because it didn't need to. If at least one board member had reached out to me to hear my concerns, the outcome may have been different. But sadly, I was told my resignation was to be sent to the superintendent only, and not the Board of Ed. So as a summary, and in direct response to you, Ms. Buzzy, Ms. Sachs, Ms. Whalen, and Chairwoman Nesty, there are indicators and red flags that need to be looked at further. A long time ago, when my son was in 4th grade in this district, and had the one and only subpar teacher he has ever had in this district, Mr. Theory told me that I didn't get to complain, that I needed to be a parent or a staff member, but I couldn't be both. Well, now I'm not both. And as a parent and community member, I implore you to do your own investigation separate from Mr. Theory, whose methods of intimidation silence his staff. You owe it to our children.
This superintendent has given us 8 years of outstanding service. I don't know if you're as aware of what that service has entailed.
And I'll leave it there, but I don't think we can allow the impression to stand without pointing out.
Can you repeat yourself? We didn't hear you.
No, I'm saying that this superintendent has given this school district 8 years of outstanding service. And I don't want the impression to be left that he's done anything less than that. He continues to perform to the highest level. And this school district can take pride in the work that he has done. But we're moving on now to the rest of our agenda. And so if I can get a motion, please, to move up item 7A under old business and subsection A, subsection 1. Jerry, and second, please. Okay, all in favor by show of hands. Any opposed? Okay, now if I could get a motion, please, to go into executive session for the purposes of discussing a contractual,
1 second.
excuse me, a legal opinion.
5 of you voted to close the school. Raise your hand.
Excuse me.
5 of you. Raise
What,
your
ma'am?
hand.
You're-
I'm speaking to you right now.
Ma'am?
You can throw me out. You can tell me I can never come again.
I'm just telling you, you're out of order.
Did you hear your Board of Selectmen? Did you hear your Board of Finance? They do not want you to close Haddam Elementary.
Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to
You
please.
need to vote to keep the school open. Reconsider. Go with your town.
I'd like to get.
Come on, vote with your town. Vote with your town.
Ma'am, you're out of order.
I know.
I don't think she cares.
Second, all in favor by show of hands. And inviting the attorney and the project manager for the high school renovation project. Susan? Okay, all in favor by show of hands? Any opposed? We are in executive session.
I guess I'm going to turn this thing down. Turn it off, I guess. There we go.
Did the racking system arrive? No?
No.
Okay.
Scheduled for Friday, and now we thought, I think, that the operative date was maybe tomorrow? Thursday?
I just wanted to follow up on that.
Great. So, any further discussion? If not, Jamie, call the roll, please.
Maura? Yes. Eric?
Yes.
Sue? Yes. Jared?
Yes.
Brenda? Yes. Eileen? Yes. Joel?
Yes.
Suzanne? Yes. Joanne?
Yes.
Thank you. Let's now get back to the agenda as it's in front of us with item 3A and B, the approval of minutes from October 2nd and October 30th. Can I get a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Jerry. Second? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor by show of hands? Any opposed? Okay, our student representatives, as you can see, are not with us tonight. Let's move on to item 5, which are our committee reports. Facilities.
Unfortunately, we were not able to meet yesterday. We will be able to meet, I believe, at the beginning of January. But our focus will be coming forward with the capital plan request for next year.
Thank you. Finance.
Finance committee met and covered standard reports of expenses over $5,000 and budget trajectory to date. We don't have anything of substance to report and no transfers requested. We would ask and did discuss very briefly that if, when the next capital expenditure request comes through, that we talk about it, just review what is actually in the request and then learn from the facilities committee when work is done and how it compares to what the financial request was.
Thank you. Policy.
Unfortunately, we haven't met. I'm working to the middle of getting schedules. Please don't leave early morning.
Thank you. Communications.
We haven't met either. We're working on the schedule for meetings.
Okay. Thank you. Personnel.
Personnel will be meeting in January on the beginning of the custodian's union contract. Will need to be discussed amongst other things, but I would ask the personnel to keep an eye out for email.
Thank you. Let's move to our liaison reports. Jerry, is there anything on Healthy Communities, Healthy Kids?
Yes, we had quite an interesting meeting on the 15th. It was sort of a welcome back meeting because they seemed to be fully organized, and there's 15 people there. Kathy from Killingworth, First Select Person, was in attendance, and students. There were Lori Rudifer, who's the executive director, and Lindsay Leah. Lindsay was the chairperson, and there was a presentation by Lisa Mason on understanding a coalition, and they talked about the 15 years of success they have had as a coalition. So I was quite excited and engaged the whole time. It was about an hour long, and they had coffee and donuts, and it was quite exciting to see all these. Yeah, it was a delicious meeting. It was,
Unlike tonight.
but I was really impressed with the enthusiasm. So we're looking forward to coming back with them and conveying to you their success.
Okay, Learn, Suzanne.
The Learn Board met, and we don't have anything significant to report.
Then I will hand you the mic. Park and Rec would be Peter. Yes, Howard, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was going to hand it to Peter, but Peter's not
Yeah,
here.
no. Haddam Board of Selectmen, Brenda.
I spoke with Liz Millardo, and she has seemed to go from a position of not wanting to be involved with the decision of Haddam, and it seems like her opinion has changed with that. She had asked me to let her speak on that, but I just wanted to make that point.
Okay, is that a reflection of something that came up at the Board of Selectmen meeting?
What's that?
Is that a reflection of something that came up at the Board of Selectmen meeting? Oh, okay. Killingworth.
Just heard from Killingworth. I have not had a chance to speak with the full Board of Selectmen in the interim since our last meeting, but obviously we just heard.
Thank you. Let's move to old business and item 7B, which is the Strategic Capital Plan Committee.
Strategic Capital Planning we met, and
We discussed three things. We talked about the status of the RFP. We had the open house as scheduled and approved by the board. We did have visitors. We do have someone who has requested a return visit, and they are working on setting up another date for another, I'm not sure I call it an open house, but access to the building inventory. In addition to that, we discussed the progress of the intermediate school, the planning and development. A new timeline has been etched out with some conversation about January and February being opportunities to communicate both internally to the school district and externally to the public more details about what to expect programmatically and having some of those meetings held in March. So that is underway as well. And then lastly, there's a third item, and I'm so sorry, it's escaping me right now. I'll ask if I can come back to it
Yeah, it's
if I
fine.
remember, I'm sorry.
We also talked about a December update, community update.
Oh, thank you very much, that is it, is the communication and the community update. What we'd like to do is have the members who are connected to the and representatives at the board of selectmen to make a communication and update on where the program is, to do a formal written communication available to the community about where the program is, to update the Q&As, to do an internal program to the internal audience about all the details associated. So we're working on putting that plan together and drafting whatever needs to be drafted. So
Is there a timeline for that?
is there a timeline? Yes, we'd like very much to have this communication come out in early January. And we'll give it to the communication committee if you'd like to see it.
But in the meantime, we have been working on this December update, which I have, and Suzanne and Eileen and I have been tweaking it a bit, but I hope to have it out in the next couple of days. Let's move on to item 7C, which is our budget timeline second read. I don't know if there are any additional concerns that would keep us from approving this tonight. If there are some questions, feel free. But if not, we could entertain a motion to approve it as presented. Will there be dinner? Yeah. To be determined. Can I get a motion then to approve the budget timeline?
I'll make a motion to approve the budget timeline for the 2019-2020 budget.
Okay. Second, anyone? Second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe. Any further discussion? Okay, let's call the roll on that one, Jenny.
Laura? Yes. Eric?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Brenda? Yes. Jerry?
Yes.
Eileen? Yes. Suzanne? Yes. And Joanne? Sorry.
Yes. Thank you. Consent agenda, items 8A and B, if I could get a motion to approve those as presented.
I'll make a motion with a lot of gratitude.
Indeed. Second? Thank you. Okay, all in favor by a show of hands? Any opposed? Good. Let's move on now to district security update from the superintendent.
Yes. So this won't be a very long update. I just wanted to make the board aware that we do continue to work on the outputs of the district security committee. They have included changes, some of the changes I described to you earlier in the year in an update around our lockdown procedures and security procedures. But the big news that I wanted to make sure you were aware of is we did choose to submit to the state for the state's competitive security grant to help fund some of the infrastructure that has been pointed out by the security committee, particularly around the area of cameras. We updated the cameras at the high school a few years ago when we did the high school this year, but the elementary schools hadn't been done. And so we had a security firm come in and look and assess our security cameras and give us recommendations. And there is a competitive state grant for security infrastructure. And today we submitted our proposal to it. We'll see how we do. It is a grant that actually reimburses you for work you do. It doesn't cover 100% of the costs, but it still leaves the discretion as to what you do in your hands, the district's hands. So even though we put a body of work into the grant, it doesn't lock the district into doing that work. It just, should we be awarded the grant, it gives us the opportunity to then pursue the grant or pursue the work and put in for reimbursement for percentages. And so we'll continue to work with the security committee. In January, I'll be pulling the security committee back together, updating them on where we were in the fall and what we've done, looking for new things to do for the spring. Also, and I was hoping Peter Sonsky would be here because I have an extra copy of it, we have the good benefit in this district of, I had several federal law enforcement officers who are aligned to our security committee. And this came out this summer from the Secret Service. It's enhancing school safety using a threat assessment model. One of our members of our security team happens to be associated with some federal agencies. I don't know too much information. But he made sure we got a hold of this. I have a copy for Peter and a copy for myself. We'll be going through to see what is in this that can inform the committee. And we'll be bringing it to the committee in January. So the work continues. I just wanted to update you particularly around the grant. Should we hear from the state about the grant?
What is it?
The grant's actually open-ended based on what you put in. We put work totaling a couple $100,000 total of work. It doesn't mean we would have to do it. We're trying, our goal was to open up that possibility from the state to see what we can do. So.
You might want to keep that if you have a legislative update.
I don't have a legislative update. As you know, because of election season, the legislature has been kind of, but as you saw in that first meeting, there's been a lot of conversations in my professional association, and I know there has been in the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, as well as our municipalities belong to a consortium of small town municipalities. And there's been a lot of talk about trying to predict and figure out how we're going to pay attention, because as I said in that meeting, because they have been holding back on their cards, it's going to roll out fast, because people have to get this stuff on the table. And so, we have my association's lobbyists working, to get in touch with the newfound legislators, and my association, our regional superintendent association, is looking to make contact with all of our new legislators, and I'll be looking to reach out to them, both to welcome them and congratulate them, as well as to begin to build the relationship we'll need moving forward.
And personnel and enrollment.
So the personnel and enrollment report is in your packet, back of your packet. It's there monthly. I remind you that as the board requested, and I think it was a very good idea, the enrollment report, monthly enrollment report is now posted online associated with the board meeting. So just like your minutes are posted associated with the board meeting, the enrollment report, since it's a monthly board report, is associated there for the public to see.
Martha, do we have any budget transfers? We do not.
I think, unless there is any other business before us, just a reminder, our next meeting is December 18th, 2 weeks from tonight, and it will be here. That's right. Anything else? Time for our second public comment. Anyone else who would like to address the board? This is your chance to do so. And please sign in if you would.
Good evening, Kate Anderson from Hingham, Connecticut, born and raised here, graduated from HK High School probably 11 years ago. I am currently the chairperson of Hadam's Economic Development Committee, secretary of the Infrastructure Committee, and also recently appointed to our POCD Implementation Committee. Just for some context, my normal 9-to-5 specialize in sales and marketing for a construction management firm and a developer specializing in schools, public schools in particular. I just want to mention too that my thoughts and comments here are absolutely independent of EDC. These are my own personal comments, no way any reflection of Hadam's EDC as a whole. I've attended the meetings about HES, the informational sessions that happened earlier in the year. You might remember me, I think I was the only public person present at the night that you voted to close HES. I've attended, I've listened quietly, and at first, I was open to the idea. But hey, this is what needs to happen, this is what needs to happen. The more I've seen this process go on, I'm not entirely sure that we are ready for this. You know, if HES is so important, I haven't really seen it on the agenda or in the meeting minutes, unless it's been brought up by public comment. In my opinion, there is a serious lack of acknowledgement of Haddam residents' concerns. I'm not saying that you're not understanding our concerns. I'm saying that we're feeling like we're not being listened to, we are not being heard. We have questions that we feel are not being answered in a way that satisfies us. Listening to the comments earlier tonight, I think it was a little hard to hear, I heard a Board of Finance from Haddam member mention, you know, there's a real possibility that we could close HES and it could sit there empty. There's a school not that far down the road in here in Clinton that's at the end of a major highway at an off-ramp in a well-established area, the Morgan School. It's been sitting empty for how many years? I think they might be moving forward now, but it took them a while to get there, and I'm sure it's had a great impact. As far as the proposal goes, I heard tonight that there's no commercial market value appraisal for the building, so I was a little surprised to hear that, a little disappointed to hear that. And my final question, we keep hearing savings. There's going to be savings, there's going to be savings. But my understanding is that these savings are going to be reused within the budget. Therefore, there's going to be no actual realized savings. If that could be confirmed, because no matter how much money you claim you're going to save, no amount of money will make up for another empty building in Haddam. I'm totally not opposed to restructuring, but we need a plan for what's going to happen. It's a beautiful school, it's a beautiful property, but we have no plan right now. And all we're asking is for you to listen, to answer our questions, and to figure out what the future of this building is. Thank you.
Anyone else in public comment? Can you, sorry.
The question, so the savings that we keep talking about, will those be actual savings, or are those savings going to be reused within the district and be applied in other places?
I think you heard tonight that part of the, although, so again, we are violating our own policy here by doing this, so let's make it a brief answer.
So how the budget works is that we have all these expenses that go into the budget. There's salaries that we pay, there's benefits that we pay, we take care of buildings, et cetera, et cetera. What the proposal for HES will do is allow us to take the costs associated with HES out of the operating budget and potentially, but the operating budget each year increases by the nature of the budget because overwhelmingly the largest aspects of our budget are personnel, benefits, special education, and infrastructure. And all of those pieces of the budget have been escalating from 2 to 5% every single year. But our budget is going up 0.5% each year. And how we're doing that is we continually taking and eliminating waste, if we think there's waste, taking things out of the budget, or reducing other items. We have been doing that for a couple of years now, and our ability to knock off 5 more pencils or to, really continue to nitty-gritty pick at the budget has got to the point where we can't find meaningful savings significant enough to offset the fact that we've got other things that are in the budget that will continue to climb at this rate. We continue to look at those things. We looked at our insurance plan this year. We'll look at our debt service. We'll look at everything and try to restructure it so that we can maximize or reduce the amount of money we spend for the things that we have to have in order to execute schools. So what ends up happening is if the money from not having to operate and pay the employees at HES that can be consolidated in creating one school and the infrastructure costs associated with that, what will end up happening is any increases that we have in the budget that will already be built in because we have 2.5% increases in salaries. We had a 5% increase in our insurance rates. We had a whole bunch of other things that are going to go. Some of that money will go to that, to pay for that, so that you don't have to feel an increase in the budget associated with it. There are a few things that we have been talking about strategically that we have wanted to do for the schools, safety among them, dealing with children's issues, social development issues and wellness, dealing with academic performance and adoption of programs so that they can be moved forward. That all have been at bay because we have been in this mode of counting every single penny. We just said, not this year, not this year, not this year, that we would like to do. So will there be enough money left over to do that? I don't know. And still present a budget that you all will vote for and pass. Only time will tell. But it is our intention to, in every way, shape, and form, to use every dollar that's spent in the best interest of keeping class sizes at the size that they are, to keep the best teachers that we possibly can have in our school district, to keep our buildings looking as best they possibly can, and to deliver an education that gives us the reputation that we will in fact need to have in order to maintain our values of our community and our real estate. And so that's been our mission, that will always be our mission, and that's what we will do with anything that comes out of this restructuring. That's the best answer I can offer you at this point.
Anyone else for public comment?
Hi, my name is Sidney Blackman. I just moved to Haddam, I think 3 years ago. It wasn't my first choice. My wife is a teacher. She did the research. Happy wife, happy life. I followed her. Okay. My sons are doing very well. I have 2 sons that go to HES. I love the fact that they're close by to our house. We live on 35 Woodcart, down 154. I wasn't going to talk, and I wasn't prepared to talk. My wife's like, we got to go to this board meeting, so I came up. But having grown up in New Haven, then moved to Meriden, I'm very familiar with class size. I'm very familiar with not getting the attention that needs to happen in order for kids to get the education that they need. My few concerns that, my wife was telling me about this, so I'm not overly informed, but a few concerns is one, now you're moving the elementary school basically across town. Now I have a 8-year-old and a 6-year-old that are going to be sitting on a bus for how long with what students? Because it sounds like they're going to be going, like my son will be going into 3rd grade with middle school students or something like that. I'm not sure of all this, but now he's traveling across town. He's going to be on the bus for 45 minutes to an hour. Bathrooms. I'm a correction officer. I drive grown men and women around in a bus that can't seem to hold their water for 35 minutes. But now you're going to ask my 6- and 7-year-old son to do that. You're consolidating. We got to consolidate. Anybody who's hung out with the kids for more than 5 minutes at that age, they're hyped. And I don't know if I could sit and keep 15 little kids entertained or steady long enough for me to teach them. Now you're going to increase that. That's a problem. But more than that, I leave all of that to smarter people than me. I was sitting here, I don't know if you noticed me, I'm kind of tall, I stand out. I was sitting here watching guys, and I was very disturbed by the lack of interest. Just almost flat out. Lack of interest. When the people that were talking, the voters, the little time that you, director, I don't know what the proper term is, actually responded was just a shake of the head. That's very disturbing, because we vote for you. And it's not about what you want. It's about what we want. This is why we pay taxes. This is why we vote you. And when you're just looking at us laughing and already made up your mind flat out. And listen, my job, my life depends on the ability to read people. And I've been doing it for 18 years. 18. I'm looking to retire in 2 years. And apparently, I'm looking to probably join your group. I didn't want to. I'm not a political person. I'm not good at it. But when I see you doing that, it's very angering to me. You know, I really don't care. I mean, that's a lie. I do care about the school, but I care about being heard. And when you're sitting here, already made up your mind, we just got to go through this just because we have to go through this. And it's very secretive, and everything is behind closed doors, or I feel like it's behind closed doors. Sometimes it's just the impression that you're giving. It's very angry. Angry. And you, Mr. Superintendent, you got flat out insulted, and you didn't say anything. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to sit there and take that. I would have stood up and defended myself. You know, if what you're doing is right, you defend yourself. I wouldn't do it. But that's my biggest concern, is the fact that you're sitting here listening, people come out and say what they say, and you just don't. My impression, based on what I'm seeing, is that you just didn't care. We had made up our minds, we're going to do what we want no matter what we heard. It doesn't matter. We don't care. We've already done it. We voted, and it doesn't matter. Now you have the citizens of Haddam come out and say, listen, at best, can you just hold off a year while we get the information that you've got so we can make an informed decision or present an informed opinion to you to make an informed decision? And no, we're going to do what we want to do because we've crunched the numbers and we need to save 4 pencils. I'll buy you the pencils. All right? If it's my kid's education, I'm done. I'm not going to school anymore, thank God. But my kids are. And I got to give them the best education that I can. We moved out of Meriden because that school system sucked. And my wife did the research on her and found out that Haddam, she comes to me home, Haddam is the best school. They got rated like number 3 in the country or something like that. And I'm like, honey, that's your thing. I'm all about security. I'd love to see that book, by the way. You know, I'm all about security, but she's the one that's about that. So when you're telling me that all of a sudden what has been working for Haddam for however many years before we showed up, you're now going to change after we've bought our house and invested in this community, is very frustrating. And when we come to voice that opinion, you're just, I don't care. I don't care. That is upsetting. That's all I have to say.
Good evening, I'm Jennifer Petrillo. I've probably spoken 9 out of 10 of your last meetings in the last 8 months about the same thing. What I hope that you have all seen tonight is that I'm not the only one. And all I've heard from a lot of you, same 15 people keep coming out. Same 15 people keep coming out. Nobody else has said that. I've not heard that from anybody else. But everybody else is busy and they can't take all these hours away from their family and their children to do the research and to come to your meetings and to let you know what our town wants. It isn't just me, it isn't just my street, it isn't just AGS parents. It's business owners that we had flooding here tonight. It's taxpayers, it's elderly, it's young, you saw them all out there chanting, save AGS. They've all created that on their own at their own school. What I hope that you have seen is that even our town officials do not want this change to happen. Yes, you're saving $1 million, but I think that 9 out of 10 people in this room have also said that they would pay to keep the school open. I think that I have heard Jerry Matthews reference the dollar per pupil in this region has always been very high. And there have been hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people wanting to go to school, save money, all of that. And in the end, what we're doing is closing the school, paying the same and getting less. And some of you will argue that getting to this school is great, which it is. I can't wait for my kids to get here, but in the end, this school we didn't need, and we all know that. We all didn't want it when it was built. It was built for a population that this town could never sustain, and you opened the doors and enrollment went down. So that only makes sense, that you built a humongous school for a little town, and you still can't fill it. We understood that. That's why we picked this town, and that's why we pay these taxes. We want small class sizes. My daughter is in a class with 15 children. She gets an amazing, amazing one-on-one time every single day in that classroom. I talk to those teachers. They are in heaven. Literally, they drive to school every day, and they are in heaven. They are at their dream job, outdoor classrooms, everything and anything that they've ever worked for is here. We have such happy teachers. So I'm not sure who said Burr's happier or cleaner, the teachers are happy. Every teacher that I know at Haddam Elementary loves their job, loves the students, and only cares about their education. While you all have been charged with keeping our expenses in line as we understand that, I think that you really need to understand that we want this school open for more reasons than just the expenses. The businesses that are struggling in our town, all the way starting from the Smith property in Tylerville, all the way through to Dunkin' Donuts. Vanellic can't fill that. No one can fill. It's not like you're going to sell this building to a huge company that's going to get a great ROI, because we don't have a thriving center right now. And if you take the anchor out, we have yet one more building. And no one's going to come here. We have friends that are looking here, but if the elementary school is closed, why do they want to come to an almost desolate center? And it may not be Rossi's, but perception is everything. We're in the news again for closing the school. You guys made a decision 8 months ago, and you're on the news again because your town is pleading, please do not close the school, please. And Sydney said it great. You guys didn't listen to us. I went around and spent all this time, all of this money, all of this everything, get this petition signed, give it to you, and it's like, great. Oh, what am I going to do with this? It doesn't give us an alternative. It did, and what it showed is you guys didn't care what we wanted from the get-go, prior to the vote. We came out prior to the vote, and you also didn't tell us when the vote was. Every time during their structuring meeting, it was sometime in March when we vote. No one let us know ahead of time. I just assumed that it was, so I sent Joanne the petition trying to get ahead of the vote. It still didn't make a difference. And I think the same thing is you guys have probably gotten 400 emails about this over the last 8 months. You have to understand, no one really wants this. There may be a select few that want to save money, but the advertising of saving $1 million sounds great. But if we're not actually saving, then our dollar per pupil isn't changing. So please, rescind the votes and keep our town thriving, and our children and our teachers amazing as they are now. Thank you.
I think we've reached the time for us to adjourn our meeting tonight. Mr. Blackman, I just want to say that if I had any kind of reaction that you felt was disrespectful, I apologize. It was really more a case of, as I said before, the public comment section moves.
Thank you, Jen. The public comment section moves really only in one direction. It's not a dialogue. And so if I had any facial expression that registered anything, it might have been frustration at not being able to say something or to engage in a dialogue, but it was nothing more than that. I apologize if that seemed to be indifference or disrespect. None was intended, so please know that.
How do we have a dialogue? That's all I want to say.
Okay, and I think this will be our last speaker, please.
No, he just asked a
That's all.
question. How do you have a dialogue?
We know that, I know that you can't tell us.
I didn't hear your question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so that's all I want to say. Because I'd like to have conversation. I know that we can't, I don't know how, I'll put my contact information here. So if I can ask questions and get answers, I'm going to have my contact information here. So if anybody wants to converse, I would love to.
That's fine, and you know our email addresses, all of our email addresses are on the website.
I don't know that. That's why I come here, because I didn't know that.
No, they are, and the website is a real source of good information, including how to contact board members. So please.
I can ask a single question, get an answer. I don't want to take up more.
No, it's fine. I'm just trying to tell you that there is a mechanism in place, and email addresses and phone numbers are on there for exactly that purpose.
Okay, good.
Well, as Eileen is saying, my job, part of it, is to respond to all emails. I do the best I can, and that, I think, is a responsibility of this board. If you've taken the time to write us an email, I need to take the time to respond to it. So our addresses are all there, I guess, is the bottom line. Okay. Thank you all for coming tonight, and we are adjourned.
Thank you. Ryan.